Welcome to the Inside Scoop Live podcast, where indie authors get personal about their books, their writing, and their passions. I'm your host, Sherry Hoyt. Join me for some lively conversations with debut indie authors and seasoned veterans alike. It's a great place to find your next amazing read or even get inspired. So sit back and enjoy the show and let me know what you think. Hi, everyone. Today, my guest is Julian Tryst, author of Garvey Feinstein, Hollywood Predator. It's the story of the rise and fall of a lecherous Hollywood mogul named Garvey. Before we get started, here's the inside scoop on the author. Julian Tryst is a fiction author from Canada who likes to observe the messed up aspects of human nature and make stories out of them. To learn more about Julian Tryst and his work, visit his website at juliantryst.com. Well, hi, Julian. Welcome to Inside Scoop Live.
Hello. Thanks for inviting me, Sherry.
To get started, tell us a little bit about your journey as an author. Like, how long have you been writing, and what influenced your decision to become an author?
Writing, you could say, pretty much, I wouldn't say forever. Like, I didn't write at age 2, but ever since I could write stories, I did. Since I was a kid, let's say. I used to write little stories. That's just what I did. I just, sit around, I'm going to be a writer or anything like that. It wasn't like a dream of mine or anything. It's just something I did. And then with age, I started to write more complex stories about things I observed. And, when you do something like that and people around you, why do you keep doing it? Well, why don't you do it more seriously? Why, they try to turn in your hobby into something more serious. And I'm like, sure, why not? So I started publishing. That first story I wrote, it was like about a little kid. It looks like a children's story. The reason for that is that I wrote it because when I was 12. I wrote like a rough version of it when I was 12. And, kids coming up upon an egg and a magic egg, and he can talk with animals and things like that. I wrote it like decades ago. So I got it out of the tomb. It was, I don't know where I had left it.
Yeah.
And so I made it, I added details to it, some modifications, and then that was my first publication.
So what is Garvey Feinstein, Hollywood Predator, all about?
Well, when you see the title, you might remember, you might recall someone with a similar name. Well, it's about that someone. I'm not going to refer to him. I'm just going to refer to him as that guy.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's about that. I read the stories like everyone else in the news and everything, and it basically struck me that the whole thing wasn't just something about some guy who was raping women or who's pressuring them, blackmailing them and everything. It was, the whole thing was weird. When you read about the people around him, how they basically actively enabled that, not just tolerated it, but actively enabled it. They built an entire system of, it's like a machine, a well-oiled machine where basically women just went in and everybody around him, basically his assistants, his colleagues, they all enabled that. Some of them enabled that at the entry when the women came in. Some of that tried to pick up the pieces afterwards. And it was like, it was a shadow company, an entire business. And that struck me, like it was reported, but nobody dwelled on it, like the details of it. And, it's just weird how something like that gets accepted and built. So my interest was piqued like by all that weirdness that surrounded the actual rapes and everything. And so I started writing about that. I tried to reconstruct the whole thing. No, I didn't reconstruct it like literally how it happened, but the whole machinery of it, I did it in the book. And then there was the very story itself where, the guy didn't just rape women, but it was the whole degrees of coercion.
Yeah.
He went through the whole gamut. If you can call it degrees of coercion, which can go from pressure to basically harassment, into threats, into blackmail, into actual force, into physical force. Basically, the whole thing happened. And the story basically wrote itself. And I didn't write it literally. All the names were changed. But basically, most of the names have actual counterparts in reality, even those mentioned casually or briefly. They have their actual counterparts, and a lot of them sound like them. And yeah, it was a weird story, and I tried to retell it and go into all the all the lurid details, even though I changed parts of that.
Yeah. Would you classify it as satire or erotica or both?
Right. Yeah, it's it could be both, because parts of it are, are a little humorous, and even that the humor sort of wrote itself. There are instances where just they were just weird, and so yeah, there are parts that are humorous. Some things I added myself, like he hired a pickup artist to help him with women. That didn't happen to my knowledge. That didn't happen in reality. But what actually happened in reality, what everybody told about him, is that he was really clumsy, and like the guy wasn't smooth enough, and with women, with everybody, basically. But he was rich, so what is he going to do? He hired a pickup artist to help him with that, and so there are humorous, even if unintentionally, aspects of it. And yeah, and of course there's the guy, basically there was one thing in his mind, which was sex with women,
Yeah.
to have women. So obviously there's I won't call it sexy, but yeah, it's erotica, okay, aspect of it. So that's that too. But when I started writing, I wasn't gonna, I'm gonna write erotica and plus humor. That's not how it was planned. It wasn't planned at all. But those are just the elements of the story, the actual story as it happened and as it came along, as it was written. So
Yeah.
yeah, it happened, but naturally.
So you kind of had an idea where your story was going, but you didn't like plan it out. That kind of just happened naturally.
That's right. Yes, I didn't pick up the genres. I didn't know where it was going. So I had a rough idea about what happened because I read about the whole thing. As I said, because I found it weird, especially the whole, the whole organization he made around just, it's like you construct a whole business around just you trying to get women. That's weird.
Yeah.
It's not like a business where, let's say, the pickup artist, he helps like other men. No, he wasn't trying to help, just himself. That's how I started to write it. So there was one assistant that took care of the women coming in, and there was the other one took care of the women coming out. Then there was that lawyer who tried to shut them up. And that's how I started to construct the story. And then I filled it up by reading some here, some of that, some of what happened, changing some things.
Mm-hmm.
And I just wrote the story. And then, when you write, you try to paint the events. You don't just write coldly. You try to paint with adjectives and everything. And basically, that's how the story gets written. And so there were obviously, there was one thing in his mind, and that thing happened a lot. So, that was a choice from the other. Like, do I write the sex stuff as I believe happened? Well, I did. If you're going to write the whole thing, I'm going to write the whole thing. And I wrote about how he organized the whole thing, how they came in, how they got out. So, yeah, why not that?
Yeah.
So basically, it was a recount of what happened in a detailed way, with some modifications, and plus in the usual storytelling way where you try to paint the events and link them up naturally and smoothly, and that's basically what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, you took some creative liberties. Yeah.
Obviously, yeah. Obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, people. Let's say some people are gonna want to read about that to know about what happened, not literally, but to get a feel.
Right.
How it happens, how these things go there. Okay, they're gonna read about that. There's the lurid part of it, but there's also the entertainment part of it. Okay, so someone who wants to read a novel or watch a movie or anything, he or she also wants to be entertained at the very least. So there was some of that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's the suspense, the thrilling aspects, what's gonna happen. So I took some liberties, not in that aspect, but also there are the events itself. Like in the end, when he fell, that I changed quite a lot because he didn't just fell like that. In reality, that he was just called out by some actresses and some of the people there, and that was it. And that was pretty anticlimactic. Like the guy was there, and basically people told on him. That's it, and then he fell.
Yeah,
that was basically how the scandal broke. And it's a little hard to make a story out of that. That was a scandal, media scandal and everything, but it was not. So the way he fell, that was changed. But yeah, pretty much everything else, it was only minor detail changes.
Okay, all right. I love the way you open the story because, I just felt like way to grab the readers with the first sentence because it starts off innocently enough. And then right after the first sentence, bam, goes down the rabbit hole, so to speak. I was wondering if you would mind reading the first paragraph. I feel like it really gives the reader a clear picture of your character in just a few short sentences.
Okay, first of all, Garvey Feinstein, a dreamy boy with fire in his heart. Garvey's dream revolved primarily around his love for the movies and, not least, for the opposite sex. As to the fire, it was fanned partly by his natural hormonal inclinations, testosterone perhaps, but also by resentment for not always fitting in, for being left out of many a social setting, and for having felt like the odd one out all too often in his life.
Yeah.
So that's basically the premise. This is from certain, I don't know, allegations to the people around him that he didn't always fit in when he was a kid and things like that. So basically I made the connection since some of the witnesses and everything said that he didn't always fit in, he wasn't smooth with people and everything like that. So naturally, I tied all of this into the story. Since he did all that, maybe that has something to do with how he turned out. Maybe not, but I tied it in anyway.
Yeah, I think it does because it addresses real life issues like the bullying, like not fitting in. And I feel like those behaviors as a child, not to excuse his behavior as an adult, but that kind of behavior and that kind of, being left out or being bullied over and over and over again, make kids turn into not nice people. Like this one became a sexual predator, or that one became a high school shooter, or even a serial killer.
Yeah, people cope however they can, and it does fuel resentment, and that resentment doesn't usually go away overnight. So I don't know if that's that. Maybe it's what I believe, what I conveyed in the story is that it was partly that and partly just his natural, male urges, which were maybe more severe for his case, let's say. But yes, that was that. And, as I said, it was mentioned by some of the people around him. I don't know if he was bullied. I didn't read that, but he was felt left out, as you say. He was a little awkward. It was awkward, and he didn't feel like he fit in all too often. So yeah, he was felt left out, and I made the connection that it was partly because of that. Could be, could not be, but that usually plays out, like you say. A lot of shooters and things like that are usually bullied or ostracized. So there's that. I forgot his name. That was that California shooter who did it specifically.
Oh yeah.
Because of that, because he couldn't get girls. That was his thing, and he wrote a manifesto. So yes, there are people who cope with things like that in violent or toxic ways. So that could very well be due to that, at least partly.
Yeah. I mean, those are extreme circumstances, but they do happen.
They do happen, but sometimes they're not even the primary reason, but they add to the severity of the lashing out. Absolutely. So maybe he's just a horny guy, who's just, maybe that's his natural inclination to chase skirts and everything. But it's one thing to go around and try to get women, but to try to do it in that blackmail-y thing and try to coerce them into it and everything, that's not regular horniness. What I presume is that his inadequacies helped push him into that.
Now, in your story, does Garvey have any redeeming qualities at all?
Yeah, not really. Because I could have mentioned some of them, not directly, but indirectly in the story. But when you know someone personally, even if he's messed up in his social life, they can be a regular person, not necessarily a great guy. He wasn't a great guy, even with the people who were close to him. He wasn't necessarily a great guy, but he could be a good enough guy to be tolerated, so you can live with him and be with him. He was no great guy by any means. He alternated between horrible and okay. He had okay moments and horrible moments.
Yeah. Now, I feel like your book is the kind of book where people are either going to absolutely love it or absolutely not, just because of the content, the subject matter. Has that been your experience? And what kind of feedback have you received from readers?
Actually, I didn't get a lot of hate.
Oh,
I don't really get a lot of hate. Yeah, so there was criticism, but that it was too lurid. One says that was glorifying rape. Yeah, I don't think I did, but I mean, listen, a lot of novels are this lurid. It's no more lurid than many similar novels, which you could classify as erotica. But this was based on a real story. So there's always a section of people that say that you're glorifying this, you're glorifying that. Even when they say, when they make a story about some serial killer, we hear that. Listen, the guy from start to finish, he was a bad guy and he got his due. Everybody around it, even when I told, not from when the characters are talking, when I'm the one telling the story, I'm telling him from the viewpoint that he's getting his due. So, if you're going to tell the story of someone getting his due, in the end, you got to tell why he's getting his due.
Right.
So, you have to tell it. You have to tell what he did, exactly, what he did. And I wasn't just going to gloss over, it can be ugly and you have to paint it how it was.
Yeah.
So that was basically the main criticism. Because they said it was clear that it wasn't a pro-Garvey story, even though he was the protagonist,
right,
quote unquote, but it wasn't a pro-Garvey story by any means.
Yeah. Well, our reviewer loved the story. She thought it was very entertaining. She said it was a little creepy, but it was entertaining,
Yeah, well, the guy was creepy, so
but,
yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It fits. So, but yeah, she thought it was really interesting. And, you've got to take it for what it is. It's pure entertainment.
Yeah, there is an entertainment. There is, you could say, a voyeur part of it, because not everyone follows the scandal in the details. So not everyone knew how the whole thing was enabled. So there is a voyeur part of it, how these things happen on the inside. It was based on as many accounts of it as I heard. Obviously, again, some modifications, some changes. But so, yes, there is the entertainment, the voyeur, the curiosity, how these things happen.
Yeah. Now, one thing I wanted to mention is your cover is amazing. I mean, it's kind of creepy, but it's amazing because I feel like it really represents what you're going to experience when you start reading. I mean, that guy. So how did you come up with your cover design? Did you work with an illustrator? Did you have an idea in mind? Or how did you create your cover?
Yep, I had the idea while I was writing. It was way before I finished, because that's exactly, that feeling, that creepy feel, that's exactly what I got, even when I wrote it myself. So yeah, that's the guy, that's my guy. Yes, I worked with an illustrator. You know what I did? I took a story of the actual guy. It was in, I don't know, sort of a gala or whatever. It was in a suit, a 3-day beard, and that was that picture. I told the illustrator, draw someone who looks like him, but not identical to him. Like this guy, but not identical to this guy. And she did. Then I said, add some threatening aura, some, you have to get some bad vibes from him. And then the dark was added, and the thing around, the light around his eye. And I mentioned that it has to be ugly because the actual guy was ugly. I tried to, at the same time, remain faithful and at the same time not be 100% identical to him because, after all, it's Garvey Feinstein, not the actual guy. So that's how it went.
Well, your illustrator did an amazing job.
She'll be flattered. I told her myself, I told her I was satisfied. Usually, for the first book, it had to be like 3 times done and redone. And she did it like the first time. It had to be creepy. That's, that vibe that you got, that was the intended purpose of it.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
I had to feel, even though I wrote it myself, I had to feel creeped out by it, backed by it. So, yeah, that was that. And, yeah, she did a good job.
Yes, she did. She did. Now, your bio, which for a writer, I've got to say, your bio is the shortest bio I've ever read. So,
yeah.
You're being humble, huh?
Yeah, that's some of that. When it comes to the bio, because these are just my beginnings, let's say formally, when it comes to formal writings.
Yeah.
And, let's say if I sort of take off, even if moderately, then I'm going to, out myself to the real world because this isn't my real name.
Yeah.
This is a pen name. And I'm not even from the West. I'm a recent immigrant. I came to Canada last year. So, I'm very new.
Yeah. Do you have family and friends did they know you were writing, or were they surprised that you put out a book, or did they even know? I know you're using a pen name. So.
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. They don't know. They don't know that I'm, because the very first book, it was my actual name, so they knew that.
Mm-hmm.
But then, as I said, I immigrated far away from home, so they have no idea what I'm doing, or even if I'm still writing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I like it was to start anew for that there's that immigrant energy. When you maybe even when you immigrate internally, if you move to a new city or something, you got the energy with you. You know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna write a story about some guy who did this, and I'm gonna. So I did that, and that was the energy I brought with me, and
I
that
love
just
it.
came with moving. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, no one knows, and they'd be very like if they actually read the book, if they knew about it and read it, they'll be very surprised to say the least.
Yeah.
I can imagine my mother reading that. Wow, that's what it goes to into my boy's sick mind. Is that how it goes? So
Oh my goodness.
She'd be she'd be very surprised. But they'll know sooner or later. I'm not gonna. Maybe into my third, fourth book, they'll end up knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah. By then, So what are they gonna do?
All right. It's done.
Yeah.
It's done. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a done deal.
So what's next for you? Do you have another story you're planning on working on?
Yep, I do. I'm almost done with it. It's a story about a bunch of LGBT folks who basically they go into an island. There's an island in New York, like an uninhabited island by New York, Brothers Island, I think its name. And they go there. They're friends, mostly LGBT, not all of them. So they go there as part. They don't live in New York, but they go there just to go into that island, and they sneak in because you can't just get in there into that island. So they sneak in. They pay off some dude and whatever. They just want to spend there a few days, and then things happen. And that's how it goes. Things happen, and
yeah. So you say you're almost through with it. Do you have any idea when it will be ready for publication, or not yet?
Before this year ends. I believe this would like 90% sure or 95% sure before this year ends.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. Good for you. Yeah.
Yeah, because I'm 90% into it, or maybe 95% into it. Well, let's say between September and December.
Okay. Well, good. Well, Julian, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing a little bit about you and your work. It was really interesting, and I'm excited to see what you come up with next.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for joining me today for my interview with Julian Tryst, author of Garvey Feinstein, Hollywood Predator. To learn more about Julian Tryst and his work, visit his website at juliantryst.com. And be sure to check out our other interviews on InsideScoopLive.com.